let's take a look at the Trump tariff turmoil and the Trump presidency 2.0. And I'm calling it the Trump tariff turmoil because it is fair that it has been a fair amount of turmoil. That you cannot turn on the news right now without having to hear, depending on where you get your news from or who you listen to or what they're talking about, how this whole stock market thing and the whole fearfulness in the economy and the whole uncertainty right now, it's President Trump's fault. And I'm just going to call it the Trump tariff turmoil until we figure out what's really happening here. So if we look at that, probably the best way to look at that is to go back to the Trump presidency 1.0. And, you know, it seems like it's a decade ago. It seems like it's just forever ago that we had him as president, President 45. Now he's 47. But I went back and pulled up the data on the S&P 500. And this chart, I think, is very interesting. From the beginning of his presidency to the end of his presidency, roughly about 6 months out, the S&P 500 went up 87%. That's not quite doubling, but it went up almost 87%. So if you had $100,000, you had $187,000 if you were fully invested in the S&P 500 only. But that's what that was, 87%. And that is amazing. Not every presidency can say that's what's happened with the S&P 500. Some have done well. I'm not suggesting that nobody's done well. They all do. They all have had good years and bad years. But for the Trump presidency, 87% is not bad in his first time around. But that's not really my focal point here. My real focal point is next. Because during those 4 years, he had corrections and bear markets. As a matter of fact, he had a correction in 2018, and a correction means it dropped 10% or more. And he had another correction in 2020. Again, another that's 10% downturn. And then he had 2 bear markets, which is 20% or more. He had one there in 2018 to 2019, and then he had another one when the pandemic hit in early 2020. So even though we had all that upside in the market, he went through 2 10% corrections and 2 20% bear markets, 20% or more bear markets. And yet he still had the growth with all that happening. Now, let's add a little bit more to this. Those corrections and those bear markets lasted 6 months, and 3 of them were 6 months, and one of them was 10 weeks. And so I think there's this point that even with what we're going through today, and trust me, I feel it too, it's like, will this ever end? It'll never end. It's so terrible. Will it ever go away? And yet, during this time, he actually saw 2 corrections, 2 bear markets lasting no more than 6 months on any one of them, 10 weeks on another, and still had a great year presidency term end for performance in the S&P 500. Now, not only that, but this particular time right here was created by tariffs 1.0. When President Trump in March of 2018 decided to go full-blown tariff battle with China. And he raised their tariffs 25%. He renegotiated the Mexico-Canada trade agreement. And so he was full on in that battle. He did not take it worldwide because time just didn't. There were various reasons, and we could talk about that. I think he wanted to, but he didn't. But he did that during that time, and we still had the correction, the bear market, the 6 months time frame twice, and we still saw the growth by the end. And that includes coming through a pandemic, a worst pandemic in 100 years. Now, the reason I pointed the pandemic for just a second is, you know as well as I do, the cost of living went up. We had goods that we couldn't get, and so the cost of living went up because of that. We had things we had to deal with, cost of living we couldn't get to. I don't know that we're going to experience anything worse, and not that I'm saying that I want this to happen, but I don't know if we're going to experience anything worse than that. I mean, I can remember not being able to find toilet paper at the grocery store. I can remember certain foods I wanted. I couldn't find them anymore. And when I did find them, they had gone up in price. I don't know that we're not going to experience that. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't think it's going to be that bad, but I recognize this is a risky move that he's doing. And so it might be that bad. I can tell you that when I get to the technicals, I'm hearing things from, it's just going to be a mild correction. Maybe it's honestly a good chance to buy, and you're going to see another growth period happen. Although I'll hear the other end of the spectrum, completely other end, which is we're headed for a Great Depression. We'll talk about some of that in the technicals in a second. But this is what we saw when he was president last time. And what I would suggest is that President Trump, right here, this man is a disruptor, and therefore he generates economic and market volatility. When making investment decisions, investors have a choice: follow his policies or follow the turmoil created by his policy decisions. And what I mean by that is, if you decide that his policies are going to lead us to where we want to be as a nation in this world, then we'll deal with the issues we're facing step by step. On the other hand, if we just can't live with it, if we just can't stand it, then we just get on the sidelines and just stay out of it until something else is figured out. Either one's fine. I'm just the wealth advisor here. I'll give you my opinions and we'll help make right choices for you based on what you tell us. But from a fundamental viewpoint, we have to make a decision that if these tariffs have the chance to make this nation better than it has been, then we need to work through that process. On the other hand, if we don't think the tariffs are a good choice, then what we need to do is we need to say, okay, we're going to just choose things that are defensive and stay out of this until we can see how the dust settles. Both have benefit. We'll just figure out which one has the most growth potential when it's all said and done, which brings me to this thought up here. There are no guarantees that the outcome of the second Trump presidency will compare favorably with the first Trump presidency. I know that. You know that. But we need to make a decision based upon our personal and family values, needs, and goals as we do that. And we're all in different places. Some of you are quite a ways away from retirement, so you got time. You can let this work itself out. Some of you are right on retirement. You've got to make decisions right away. You want to stay on top of this, but at the same time, you kind of like what you see, even though you don't like the market turmoil. Some of you are already retired, and you're trying to figure out, can I survive this? What do I need to do? How do I make sure that I have enough to last me as long as I do? So these are points that we're going to have to work through. And this is where we start to move into sort of technical analytics and understanding what's really going on. But I wanted to spend the first part of tonight's discussion helping you to understand that tariffs are not terrible. They may or may not fit in today's world, although I will tell you, I think they do. I think that they are a perfect place to start changing, resetting some of the way the world and the United States interact. And I think they will help set up something for our children and our grandchildren that may not be there if we don't do something different. And if tariffs aren't the right solution, I'm pretty confident that President Trump and his team are ready to make other choices too, because I think ultimately what he wants to do is to create that Make America Great Again process, put it in place, lock it in.